Welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to jump into some crazy court cases today?
Always. I'm fascinated by these real-life legal dramas. It's amazing how everyday situations can take such unexpected turns.
Well, today we've got four cases that definitely fit that description. We're talking ex-spouses battling over medical bills, a cohabitation agreement gone wrong, a schoolyard injury with some serious questions about responsibility, and even a neighborly dispute involving a dog paternity mystery.
It sounds like we've got a little bit of everything today.
We do. So let's dive right into our first case. It involves a woman named Tamara Rhodes who is suing her ex-husband, Mr. Rhodes, for legal fees related to medical bills.
Okay, I'm intrigued already. Legal fees and medical bills. What's the story here?
Well, the medical bills are for her current husband's child.
Oh, interesting. So not her ex-husband's child.
Right, but here's the catch. The child was born while she was still legally married to Mr. Rhodes.
I see where this is going. That definitely complicates things.
It does. Because of that, Mr. Rhodes' insurance company initially covered the medical expenses based on the presumption of paternity.
Right, that makes sense. If a child is born during a marriage, the husband is legally presumed to be the father, and that can have implications for things like insurance coverage.
Exactly. But then the insurance company did some digging and decided to deny coverage, claiming the child wasn't actually Mr. Rhodes.
So what happened next? Did Tamara just accept that?
Nope. She ended up suing her ex-husband to recoup the legal fees she racked up, trying to appeal the insurance company's decision.
That's where things get tricky. It sounds like she might have been better off suing the insurance company directly for denying coverage rather than going after her ex-husband for the legal fees.
You know, the judge actually said something similar. The judge even stated that Tamara should have pursued legal action against the insurance company instead of her ex-husband.
Well, there you go. It seems like the judge is suggesting that her legal strategy might have been misdirected.
But at the same time, I can see why she might feel like her ex-husband bears some responsibility, given that the situation stemmed from their previous marriage.
I understand that perspective. It's a gray area, for sure. The judge's decision likely hinges on the fact that the insurance company, not Mr. Rhodes, made the decision to deny coverage. But you could also argue that Mr. Rhodes' previous marital status created the initial situation that led to those insurance complications.
Right, so it's not just about who's legally responsible, but also about who carries the practical and financial burden in this messy situation.
It's a tough call. On one hand, going after the insurance company directly might seem like the most logical approach. But on the other hand, can you imagine the resources and energy it takes to fight a huge corporation?
Yeah,
Especially when you're dealing with a sick child on top of it all.
absolutely. Okay, let's move on to our next case, which takes us into the world of cohabitation and breakups. This one involves Eric Favre and Rebecca Powell, a couple whose living arrangement and subsequent split resulted in a whole heap of legal drama.
Oh boy, cohabitation cases can get really complicated, especially when there are no clear agreements in place.
Well, in this case, complicated is an understatement. We have Eric suing Rebecca for expenses from their time living together. But get this, Rebecca is countersuing him, alleging assault and claiming lost wages.
Wow, so we've got accusations flying from both sides. It's a classic example of how a simple disagreement can spiral into a full-blown legal battle.
Exactly. So let's unpack those claims a bit. Rebecca claims that Eric assaulted her during their relationship, but there's no police report to support those allegations. However, Eric openly admitted to cutting off the electricity and phone service to the house they shared while Rebecca and her kids were still living there.
That's a pretty big red flag. While we don't have all the details, cutting off utilities while someone, especially children, are living in a home could be seen as coercive or even harassment.
Right. It seems pretty extreme. Makes you wonder if his actions were justified or something else was going on.
It also raises questions about whether Rebecca had grounds to file for a restraining order, especially if she felt unsafe. This brings up the idea of duty of care, even if they weren't married. Eric might still have had a legal obligation to ensure the safety of everyone living in that shared residence.
Duty of care. Could you break that down for our listeners? I'm not sure everyone's familiar with the legal definition.
Sure, duty of care basically means you have a legal obligation to not harm others. This applies to all sorts of situations, from driving to owning property. So even though Eric might have had the right to end the utilities contract, he might have breached his duty of care by doing it in a way that put Rebecca and her kids at risk.
That makes sense. So it's not just about being right or wrong in a relationship,
Hmm.
but also about understanding the legal consequences of your actions.
Precisely. And this case highlights how a seemingly personal dispute can have some serious legal ramifications. It's not just about he said, she said, but about understanding the potential consequences.
This whole case makes me think about what responsible behavior really means, especially when a relationship goes south. What happens when things go beyond hurt feelings and into the realm of potential legal trouble? What about Rebecca's claim for lost wages? Could that actually hold up in court?
It's definitely possible. Rebecca might argue that the disruption from the breakup, the alleged assault, and the cut-off utilities all affected her ability to work and earn money. This is where having proof is so important. If she can show evidence like pay stubs or messages with her boss that directly link her lost income to Eric's actions, her claim might have merit.
It sounds like a lot to untangle. We've got questions about whether Eric was justified, possible grounds for a restraining order, and the validity of Rebecca's claims for lost wages. And of course, there's the whole issue of child support, which always adds another layer of complexity to these kinds of cases.
You're right, child support is a huge factor. Child support laws aim to protect children, and the court will consider that when figuring out each parent's financial responsibilities, regardless of whether they were ever married.
So this case is a stark reminder that even personal relationships can quickly become entangled with the legal system, sometimes leading to complex and heated legal battles. What jumps out at you the most in this case? What are the main things the court will need to address?
To me, the big question is about Eric's intent. Did he cut off the utilities as revenge, or was it purely a financial decision? The court needs to look at all the evidence and determine whether his actions were justifiable or cross the line into negligence or harassment.
And what about Rebecca's claims? Do you think she has a solid case for assault and lost wages?
It's hard to say for sure without having all the facts. The lack of evidence to back up the assault claim definitely hurts her case. However, if she can show convincing proof of lost wages that are directly tied to the breakup and Eric's actions, her claim might stand up in court.
This is such a great example of how even personal disagreements can have major legal consequences. It's a wake-up call for all of us to think about how we handle conflict, especially in relationships where finances and responsibilities are intertwined.
I agree. And it's a reminder that understanding the laws around cohabitation, financial responsibility, and personal safety can really help us navigate these tricky situations and hopefully avoid ending up in court.
Okay, ready to tackle our next case. This one hits close to home for a lot of parents out there. It's a schoolyard injury, and it raises some tough questions about negligence and responsibility.
When kids are involved, the stakes are always higher, right? This case really forces us to think about the responsibilities schools have to protect their students and what happens when they fail to do so.
We've got a father, Bradley Duran, who is suing his son's school principal because his son, Bradley Jr., broke his collarbone on school grounds.
Kids get hurt on the playground all the time. What makes this case different?
This wasn't just your average playground scuffle. Bradley Jr. was playing with another student when he was picked up and thrown to the ground, and that's what caused the broken collarbone. But what's even more concerning is how the school responded, rather didn't respond, after it happened.
Oh, what do you mean?
They didn't contact Bradley's father right away, and when they finally did, they downplayed how serious the injury was. It seems strange, right? You'd think they'd immediately inform the parent and get medical help, especially for a possible broken bone.
I agree. That does seem odd. Why wouldn't they take it more seriously?
Exactly. And there's testimony saying that the teacher admitted to not fully checking Bradley Jr., even after he said his shoulder hurt. This lack of attention raises serious questions about whether the school fulfilled its duty of care to keep its students safe.
So we're not just talking about a simple accident. We're talking about the possibility of negligence on the school's part. But how do we determine the line between an unfortunate event and a situation where the school could be held liable?
That's a tough call, right? Where does one person's responsibility end and another's begin?
That's the question, isn't it? To prove negligence, there needs to be clear evidence that the school didn't fulfill its duty of care. This means they had a responsibility to provide a safe environment and take reasonable steps to prevent foreseeable harm. Did they have enough supervision? Did they react appropriately? These are things the court will consider when deciding liability.
It sounds like the school's delayed response and downplaying the injury could really hurt their case. They had a duty to act responsibly, and what they did or didn't do suggests they disregarded the student's well-being.
And remember, a school's duty of care isn't just about physical safety. They're also responsible for creating a culture of safety and addressing bullying or other harmful behaviors that can happen on school grounds.
That's an important point. This case makes you think about all the potential dangers at school and the responsibility schools have to minimize those risks and keep their students safe. It also makes you wonder what parents